For many years, The Undertaker, this WWE legend, proudly managed an institution that was the law behind the scenes, the Wrestlers' Court. Everyone who was summoned there would remember this experience for sure, for better and especially for worse. It's a pleasure to meet you on the Wrestling Paradise to tell you the most mind-blowing stories about this controversial place. Are you ready to be shocked to learn why Randy Orton had been summoned to this court? Are you wondering what punishment the Hardy brothers got for disrespecting Kane? Do you want to know the service that Muhammad Hassan had asked Eddie Guerrero that angered the latter? Do you want to find out why the young Paul McCannon was so traumatized by his experience in court that he left the company? And are you curious about the misunderstanding that JTG and a colleague had been in because of a woman? You have come to the right place because in our video we are going to tell you the most incredible revelations about the Undertaker's court, and they will surely surprise you. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, the most mind-blowing stories about the Undertaker's court. Here we go. The first big lesson that we learn about the backstage secrets of the Federation through stories from the Undertaker's court is that it's important to respect the elders. And the case of Muhammad Hassan is an excellent illustration of it. You should know that in 2005, this wrestler had been quite important in the company for a few months, since he played an Arab heel character who said he had been discriminated against in America since 9/11. In my eyes, he was very good in this role. At that time, Hassan, who was called Mark Kopani in real life, was only 23 years old, and he ended up in the Wrestlers' Court for reasons that he would most likely have preferred to avoid. Indeed, some veterans didn't like his attitude, and we can imagine the big push he got, while being very young aroused jealousy from his colleagues. First of all, the first reason that got him in the Wrestlers' Court was the fact of not having sold Sergeant Slaughter's moves during a match on Monday Night Raw. But facing this accusation, he defended himself by saying that, as a foreign heel, he had been told not to sell the moves of all Americans. It was really his second summons to court that put him in a panic. He went to the deceased Eddie Guerrero asking him to stop doing the camel clutch move that Hassan was using. Indeed, the young and naive Hassan listened to the veteran Kurt Angle, who told him that he had to protect his finisher at all costs and not let a colleague do it on television. If others did it, his finisher would seem less unique and impactful. Except that by asking Eddie Guerrero this, what Muhammad Hassan didn't know is that Eddie Guerrero's father is the man who invented this move, so he did it to pay tribute to his dad. This lack of respect towards an elder and a top guy like Eddie Guerrero earned him to go back to the Wrestlers' Court, where he will be sentenced to pay the bill of his fellow wrestlers at the bar where they would go to spend the evening, an amount of $4,000. Another type of situation the wrestlers better avoid is having affairs with the wrong woman. And this is something that JTG, who was a member of Crime Time, was able to learn. He was hanging out at the hotel bar with his colleagues during a European tour when they saw a woman kept looking at him from the other side of the bar. JTG tried to avoid any problems by returning to his hotel room, but he received a phone call from another wrestler telling him that this lady was on her way to his room. The two did what they had to do, but shortly after, JTG got a call from one of his close friends who said that JTG just slept with his friend's favorite groupie, although we don't know which wrestler it was. After tensions between the two for a while, a wrestlers' court was set up regarding this incident. And JTG was very stressed because he was told he would get very big punishment. Fortunately, however, the event never took place because the court was scheduled for the same day as the tragedy of Chris Benoit, and it was never rescheduled. Do you want more amazing stories about the Undertaker's court? Don't worry, we still have some very crazy stuff coming by the end of the video. The following story concerns Jeff Hardy, one of the most popular wrestlers of the Ruthless Aggression era. When they had just won the Tag Team Championship, the Hardy Boys and their manager Michael Hayes jumped on a plane to go to the next show. Hayes was keen to celebrate the team's victory thoroughly and decided they had well deserved to sit in the first 3 first-class seats they could find on the plane, even if they were not the seats they were supposed to be. But in reality, the seat on which Jeff Hardy was sitting was Kane's butt. Fortunately for Hardy, the monster was kind, and with Jeff apologizing, he agreed without any problem to give him his seat. Though when the information of what happened on that plane circulated, the veterans were furious and a wrestling court had to be held as soon as possible. The Hardy Boys were found guilty of not respecting Kane, especially since the latter is almost 7 feet tall and always had trouble being comfortable on a plane. Well, they were forced to prank Don Callis, whom everyone hated, for example, by blocking the doors of his rental car with toothpicks. In this story, The Undertaker knew it was Michael Hayes' fault, but they wanted to make an example of the Hardy Boys. In the end, the Hardys paid for bottles of Jack Daniels for Taker, and Hayes had to pay for Kane's lunches for a month. There is one lesson that seems fundamental for The Undertaker and his comrades, who are old school men who have been educated the hard way, including within the wrestling business itself. For them, a wrestler must be a man who makes himself respected, who doesn't let himself be stepped on, and who must obtain the elders' validation somehow before he can really succeed at anything in the company. And in the case of Palmer Cannon, this is a lesson that he learned in a controversial way, to say the least, and that made him want to leave the company. Cannon embodied an authority figure on SmackDown, and his character was rather interesting since he represented one of the executives of the channel that broadcast the Blues show. Unfortunately, Palmer Cannon left the Federation claiming he had been bullied by JBL and Chris Benoit. He stated that he was harassed during the wrestler's court. JBL is well known for being the prosecutor in this court, and apparently with Cannon, the Texan went too far. During the European tour in April 2006, Cannon had enough and decided to leave the company when he was only 30 years old. According to the official Bruce Pritchard, Cannon wasn't ready mentally and not mature enough to be in this business. A statement that can still seem weird when you know that, according to rumors, Palmer had been taped in a shower. We also know that JBL used to put soap on the newcomers' butts when they took a shower to test them. Anyway, this incident impacted Cannon enough to leave the industry forever. Another time, the wrestler Simon Dean had a Piper's Pit segment with the legend Roddy Piper, a man who was almost 20 years older than him, except that Dean had the bad idea to tell Piper how their segment could be improved according to him. By doing this, he was breaking a golden rule that was important for The Undertaker and his comrades, to never be patronizing with an elder or treat him as if he were a nobody. Even if Roddy Piper didn't take it badly, the court imposed a rather extreme punishment on Simon Dean. Instead of making him pay a fine, they would have simply destroyed some of his personal stuff in the shower. It seems that Dean wasn't really liked behind the scenes, which may explain why he finally didn't stay in the main roster for long. It should be noted that another golden rule in the locker room for many years was to be manly, but also correct with the women. This is what Randy Orton learned one day in an incident with the diva Dawn Marie. The Viper was still at the beginning of his career, and one day he didn't have enough money to afford a hotel room. So Dawn Marie was nice and told him he could sleep in the chair that was in her hotel room. However, she wondered if this wasn't a strategy from the legend killer to come in her room and sleep with her. In any case, Marie told him that if he approached her any time, she would kill him. They did this system several times, which was good for Randy, who was apparently in a difficult period financially. But when someone saw Orton coming out of Marie's room, it cost him his passport for the wrestler's court, because at the beginning of the 2000s, relationships between male and female wrestlers were apparently not allowed. That rule seems a bit biased since wrestling relationships, if we can call them that, did take place at that time. Another superstar who has learned to respect the elders is The Miz. At the time of the punishment he suffered, it clearly seemed unthinkable that he would manage to become champion, and not just once. This story can only arouse respect for The Miz for having succeeded in the Stamford Federation. Already, the fact that he comes from the reality TV world didn't please the veterans of the locker room. But the day when backstage, Miz was caught eating fried chicken on top of Chris Benoit's belongings, dropping a few crumbs on it by accident, it was too much. So this offense was deemed strong enough to expel The Miz from the locker room for 6 months, which forced him to dress up in the arena toilets. It was only when the Taker gave him his green light that The Miz could finally return to the locker room. And that was it for these most mind-blowing stories about The Undertaker's court. We could realize what an essential institution it has been in the Federation for years, whether to ensure no hard feelings come to rot the locker room, or to test if the new wrestlers are up to their predecessors. And I come to offer you a debate. Do you find that this wrestling court is something very bad? Or rather one of those traditions that is lacking nowadays? Come and give your opinion. It will be exciting to exchange our points of view in the comments. We can say that this place was really fascinating. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay on the Paradise of Wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?